morning. Good morning, and this meeting of the California High-Speed Rail Authority Board of Directors will come to order. Let me just first apologize. I was a little late this morning getting down here. I apologize for the inconvenience to people. My colleague Tom Richards, who drove me down, and it's my fault, not his, is parking. But since we're going to start with a staff briefing, I know that members of the public will want to have a full board here for their comments, but we are going to start with a staff briefing this morning, so I thought while he's doing that, we'd go ahead and commence the meeting. So let me begin by asking the Secretary to please call the roll.
Director Schenk, Vice Chair Richards, Director Rossi, Director Curtin, here. Director Lowenthal, Director Camacho, here. Director Miller, here. Senator Bell, Assemblymember Arambula, Chair Richard.
I'm here. Director Miller, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As I said, we're going to do things slightly differently this morning. Normally we take public comment first, but we're here today to take action on an alignment decision affecting this community, and many of the people from the community have come here to comment on that. What we've done in these kinds of situations is first to have the staff do the briefing to the board about the relevant issues, because we believe that that helps the public inform their comments to the board. So with that, our CEO, Brian Kelly, is not with us today. He's on medical leave. And so our Chief Operating Officer, Joseph Hedges, is assuming that role today. So Mr. Hedges, would you like to proceed to introduce the staff?
Yes.
Red
There we go. Sorry. First of all, I'd like to thank the board for the privilege of sitting in for Brian. Huge shoes to fill. Brian will soon be back, so I'm excited to have him back. Allow me to go back to being just the Chief Operating Officer. So it's with great pleasure today that I'm going to allow the staff to introduce this to you, to be able to go through a series of slides. And in doing so, they're going to roll out basically the concept, the environmental implications, and then the community implications to you. So with that, Diana and crew, please.
Okay. Ms. Gomez, good morning.
It's on? Okay. All right. Good morning. Good morning, Chairman and board members. So today, we're going to be requesting for the board to certify the Fresno to Bakersfield section. Today we're going to be asking the board to certify the Fresno to Bakersfield section final supplemental environmental impact report for the locally generated alternative. We're going to approve the locally generated alternative from approximately Poplar Avenue near Shafter and including a station at F Street in the city of Bakersfield. We'll also discuss the CEQA findings and then ask you to approve the mitigation program. There'll be three of us presenting this morning, myself, along with Andrew Bain, our environmental task lead, and then our Director of Environmental, Mark McLaughlin, will also present. So in terms of the background, in 2014, the authority certified the final EIR-EIS for the Fresno to Bakersfield section and approved the preferred alternative to 7 Standard Road, reserving the decision on the alignment and station location south of 7 Standard Road to a future proceeding. In June of 2014, the city of Bakersfield filed a state court lawsuit challenging the authority's EIR and approvals under the CEQA Act. In December of 2014, the city and the authority reached a settlement and where we both agreed to work together to develop and for us to study a Fresno to Bakersfield locally generated alternative to address concerns and meet our design requirements. What we did is, what you see in the map is what we reached an agreement to study what we call the locally generated alignment preferred alternative, the LGA. It's a 23-mile corridor with the station at F Street and Golden State Avenue, State Route 204. It parallels the BNSF and the UPRR Railroad corridors. The draft supplemental was published in December of 2017. It evaluated the environmental impacts associated with the alignment and compared those impacts to the preferred alternative that was in the May 2014 environmental document. Since then, we have had numerous meetings. Approximately, we had open houses. Approximately over 300 community members attended the first one in August of 2015 in Bakersfield. We had over 200 community members attend in November open houses also in Bakersfield. And then we had 2 other meetings in Shafter where we had over 100 members, and then a second one where we had 60 interested community members. So we've had approximately over 25 monthly agency coordination meetings, 125 stakeholder meetings, 5 open houses, and then in December of 2017, we had a public hearing on the environmental document where we had over 130 members participate. That was held here at the Bakersfield Marriott. Some of the results from our stakeholder engagement resulted, as what you see here is in Shafter, a retained fill option. That was another significant change from what we had approved back in the early document. So the Shafter retained fill option has both us and the BNSF on a retained fill section, and at-grade crossings of the BNSF through downtown in Shafter would also be eliminated. We've been coordinating with the city of Shafter to refine the alignment through Shafter. The other thing is the
Thank you, ma'am. And by the way, we have a screen here, so I don't want you to think that we're somehow off and uninterested. I agree with that. I just wanted you to know that we're watching also. So, thank you, ma'am. Okay, Ms. Gomez, please proceed.
So this, the LGA has the station at F Street. In our 2018 business plan, it identified ridership and revenue forecasts that show an initial line from San Francisco to Bakersfield would produce revenues that could help fund construction from the Central Valley southward into the Los Angeles Basin. F Street Station would likely be phased in as service ramps up. So the authority developed several options that would show how we would ramp up the F Street Station. We will continue to coordinate with the city as far as their vision plan and also the station design as we proceed in getting to an initial operating segment. We evaluated in terms of the F Street Station, so it would be a phased-in approach. We evaluated 4 concepts at F Street and documented those findings in a technical appendix of the final supplemental EIR. Evaluation proved feasibility of a concept and that recirculation of that environmental document, the supplemental, would not be required. As you can see, this is one of the concepts that shows proposes ultimate station platforms, which would be an aerial structure and would require vertical access either through escalators and elevators. Opening year service at F Street site could be as early as 2026 as outlined in our baseline. The phased-in station may be in operation for up to several years while service southeast of the station is initiated. Once service southeast of the station is operable, the ultimate F Street location would would encompass 46 acres and would be located between the UPRR, State Route 204, and the Carrier Canal and Chester Avenue. Vehicular access to the station would occur from the F Street underpass, the 34th Street overpass, and a right-in, right-out driveway from Chester Avenue. Pedestrians and bicycles could also access would also occur from connection to the Kern River Parkway, shown just in the green just south of the Carrier Canal. So the board identified the LJA as the preliminary preferred alternative in May 10, 2016, here in Bakersfield, where we held the board meeting. Based on the benefits mentioned previously, the board identified as the LGA as a preliminary preferred alternative to be evaluated in the draft document. As documented in the draft supplemental, the preliminary preferred is the Fresno to Bakersfield local generated alignment that's shown in violet. The LGA extends from the southern terminus of Construction Package 4 near Poplar Avenue in the city of Shafter and continues to the south and including, again, a Bakersfield station at F Street. The station associated with the preferred alternative, as I mentioned, would be located at the intersection of F and State Route 204. It also shows a maintenance of infrastructure facility, which would be located in Shafter as indicated by the green square. The maintenance of infrastructure is not the heavy maintenance facility. The final supplemental EIR evaluates impacts and proposed mitigation as necessary for our alignment all the way to Oswell to disclose impacts of the track as they might extend to the south beyond F Street. However, because the track southeast of the F Street station would not be required until the Bakersfield to Palmdale section is operable. The authority board approval today would only be for construction and operation of the F Street station and the alignment from that station towards Fresno as shown in the map. Any alignment to the southeast of the station would be approved following environmental evaluation of Bakersfield to Palmdale section currently programmed via another document, which you will hear in our second presentation. Also, mitigation measures for impacts related to the alignment southeast of the F Street station would be imposed as part of the approval of the Bakersfield to Palmdale section. At this time, I'm going to have our environmental lead, Andrew Bain, go through the details of the document.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Chairman Richard. Thank you, Board.
Good morning.
Good morning. I get to talk about the nuts and the bolts. The environmental document that was prepared, the draft supplemental EIR EIS, covered the comparable alternative to the May 2014 project. That is, it was an apples to apples comparison. The project footprint was established using the same methodology that was used in the May 2014 project. And then they were compared. So we have the same methodology used for both projects. We circulated the draft document in November 2017, asking for comments from the public and from public agencies. We had a 60-day review period during which we received 286 submissions and over 1,000 individual comments. At the close of the comment period, we responded to the comments. I'd like to first talk about the kinds of comments that we received, why I think that they were the types of comments that we received, and then how we responded to those comments. I'd like you to understand that we included in your board meeting materials our standard responses to comments. Our methodology for responding to comments from the public and from public agencies was to classify the comments, and if they were recurring comments, we would provide a standard response to those. I'd like you to know that they're in your packet so that when you're hearing public testimony today, you can kind of see how we went about responding to those comments. Frequently submitted comments resulted in standard responses, particularly for the proximity of the F Street station to the downtown and Amtrak station. A recurring theme was that there is a difference in the station location. Some see it preferred in the Truxton location, and others see it preferred at F Street, and there's a difference of opinion there. Why that is, perhaps, is that we decided to identify a preferred location in the draft, allowing the public and public agencies to respond to that. A criticism that we received on the initial Fresno to Bakersfield EIR-EIS was that we did not indicate where our preference was. And so we received a barrage of comments that were saying that we didn't give them any indication of where we were going. So with this document, we gave the public an indication of where we were going. And the comments that we received were indicative of that indication. Again, we have a number of comments that were what we would classify as opinion only. We like it, we don't like it. We want it here, we don't want it there. These are not substantive to the environmental analysis that's contained in the document. Again, we studied the locally generated alternative impacts, identified mitigation measures for those impacts, compared the impacts with mitigation, and then compared those with the May 2014 project. We also received comments about the study area. This graphic right here shows the City of Bakersfield Station Area Vision Plan. One of the things that we were able to conclude in the final was that the locally generated alternative station location at F Street is consistent with Bakersfield's vision for high-speed rail in downtown Bakersfield. Again, apples to apples comparison, side by side. This is how we came to our conclusions. Now, folks that had a support or opposition to the project may have cited they like it because they perceive socioeconomic benefits for one station location, downside on the other. Again, transportation, noise, aesthetics, they were all factors that were supporting the commenter's position that one was better than the other. A recurring theme that you may hear is that the local area jurisdiction does not represent the feelings of all people, or they don't represent the feelings of the people. We understand that. That is the nature of politics and government, and we receive feedback on that. We didn't feel we needed to respond to questions or comments regarding the legitimacy of the City of Bakersfield and their position on the vision plan and what they would like to see from a high-speed rail station. What we are concerned about is what's best for us as a transportation agency. And our focus here today is our recommendation for approval of what's best for the high-speed rail. One of the issues that was raised early on was that we had displayed a graphic that incorrectly showed the heavy maintenance facility in our analysis. That was removed in the draft, and we have an exact apples-to-apples comparison. What this map is showing you here is that the project footprint is defined in red for the locally generated alternative, in blue for the May 2014 project. It is defined. CEQA requires us to consider alternatives proposed by commenters that would avoid a potentially significant impact. We received three alternative station locations as potentially reducing significant impacts. We did two things. Number one, we reviewed the engineering feasibility of the three alternative sites, and two, we looked at environmental constraints. Our methodology was if there was a significant change or increase in environmental impacts between the May 2014 project and the LGA, it would push us back to the 2014 project, especially when it comes to federal law, Section 4F of the Transportation Act. Okay, the first alternative station site was Old Town Kern along Sumner Street between Baker Street and Beale Avenue. This had challenges because there were two historic properties located on this smaller station area, which would basically require us to go to the 2014 project because it would be a Section 4F impact that we hadn't previously had. Old Town Kern along Sumner Street between Beale Avenue and Miller Street. This impacts Union Pacific Railroad, San Joaquin Valley Railroad spur. So there was engineering challenges with that. Overcomable, but there are two historic properties also located on this, two different ones. But one of them is was previously studied in the Fresno to Bakersfield EIS as a culturally sensitive property. Seco Ranch is north of the Kern River, located across State Route 99 from the Bakersfield Airport. This is a giant agricultural field which would require the conversion of agricultural property. This was proposed as an alternative to the F Street station, while it also contradicts our prevailing requirement to have intermodality connectivity. This just didn't make sense from a planning perspective. All right, so we received comments that required us to make text changes to the document. Before you, we have 88 comments that resulted in text revisions. How we handled those were we would make a change to the document, highlight the change in gray shading. So, and we don't see a lot of gray shaded text in this final. In fact, there was so little gray shaded text that we felt it was appropriate to provide a brief chapter to the final supplemental EIR demonstrating that with the changes to the draft, we could advance a final. This created tremendous efficiencies for us and saved us quite a bit on production. Also in your packet, you have the Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program. What this is actually is taking the existing Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program from Fresno Station to 7th Standard Road, which you approved in May 2014, and updates it. It updates it to include the impacts and mitigation measures required between between Poplar Avenue, the end of CP4, and F Street Station. So it identifies those measures that are required to minimize or reduce the significance of impacts in that area. And then it also carries forward those mitigation measures that are required for the construction packages and eliminates those that may have been required for the May 2014 project between 7th Standard Road and Poplar Avenue. So I guess the note to you guys is that with approval of the updated MMRP, we're not going to see any problems with the construction packages and the design build contractors having to revise their scopes of work. Nothing changes for them. We are not meddling with the existing projects that are under construction. The Mitigation Monitoring Reporting Program identifies the parties responsible for implementation. Is that the DB contractor? Yes. Sure. Is that the design build contractor that's responsible for implementing, or is it the High-Speed Rail Authority? It tells us when the mitigation is required for implementation. This is important for the authority to plan their budgeting so that we know when the funding needs to be there. Do we need to have it for acquiring off-site mitigation so Mark can go and get a contract for habitat mitigation services, or is it the design build contractor? Meaning we're going to see that cost show up in the bid. It also has the implementing mechanism, which is basically what is it? What is the action? Are we building something, replacing something, putting a sign on something, putting a fence, etc.? Okay, this is a busy slide, so I'll just summarize. We've made it through all of the regulatory agency coordination hoops, so to speak. We have determined that the locally generated alternative is the least environmentally damaging practicable alternative for the Clean Water Act. We received concurrence from the Corps and EPA on that. We had a consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about a new species, so new information, and potential occurrence within the locally generated alternative. Completed that. We have their biological opinion. We worked with the city of Bakersfield to request that they concur that our impacts on Wheel Park and the Kern River Parkway are de minimis, as defined in Section 4F of the U.S. Transportation Act. They concurred. It's important for us to understand that concurrence with the LGA as de minimis is different than the outcome with the May 2014 project. The city of Bakersfield did not agree with our finding that the May 2014 project would be de minimis under Section 4F. So that's a key difference. Now I get to pass it off to Mark McLaughlin, who will talk about some of the pros and the cons and the comparisons. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, good morning.
Good morning. Mark McLaughlin. I'm the Director of Environmental Services for the Authority. Good morning, Chair and board members. As Andrew indicated, I'm going to talk about some benefits of the LGA. So one of the things that Andrew, he had mentioned before, so the draft supplemental EIR, EIS compared to the LGA and the preferred alternative presented in 2014, we compared both of those alternatives. For the FB, the Fresno Bakersfield LGA, it would be 23.13 miles, while the May 2014 previously approved project would be 24.16 miles. So decreased distance and travel time. Also, increased economic benefit around the F Street station. The other benefits that we would have from the locally generated alternative, the LGA would result in the displacement of 86 residences compared to 384 residential displacements associated with the May project in 2014. The LGA would also result in the displacement of 377 businesses compared to the 392 businesses associated with the previous May 2014 project. In addition to that, the LGA would displace 7 community facilities, while the May 2014 project displaced roughly 11 community facilities. One thing important to note too, that I think I went backwards here. One thing to note, very important, that the LGA would cost approximately $200 million less to construct than the May 2014 project, which is a very interesting comparison there. The comparison is the blue is the previous project, the yellow, of course, is the LGA. As Andrew had mentioned before on 4F, previously he had mentioned on the 4F portion of that the city did not concur in May 2014 with the de minimis finding that we had. Therefore, the 2014 project would result in 2 permanent 4F uses, while the FBLGA would result in de minimis 4F findings. This is very important as it relates to the city of Bakersfield. Go back here. The other important, very important thing as it relates, Andrew mentioned before, our integration process with the Corps and the EPA of our 404B1 analysis. It's very important. The LGA would have roughly 3 fewer acres of impacts when compared to the previous project. So this is important in the future permitting of the project to allow that to go forward for construction. The other indication also very important to this area, and especially in the valley, is that the LGA would impact 372 acres of important farmlands compared to 485 acres under the previous May 2014 project. So to almost end with this, or almost summary with this, I'll have another slide here. There's numerous benefits to the portion of the preferred alternative. In addition, numerous benefits, which is very important to the HSR system as a whole, of which Fresno to Bakersfield is an integral part as the center of the system. These benefits were both individually and collectively reviewed and outweigh the significant unavoidable adverse effects of implementing this portion of the preferred alternative. The benefits are in the areas of transportation, the environment, land use planning, economics, and social considerations. So when we look at that collectively, all of these different benefits we've looked at and weighed collectively to get to where we are today, that's before you for the LGA. So that ends the presentation for the LGA. We'll listen to, as the chair had mentioned, public comments. We'll be asking to have us directed to address those public comments as required, and then requesting the board action on the Fresno Bakersfield LGA. I thought I conclude the presentation.
Okay. Can I thank you very much, staff, for that. Before we move on to the Bakersfield to Palmdale section, I did get a notice from one citizen that are we having some problems with the webcast on this? Are we, Mr. Drozd, are you aware of that?
We're looking into it currently, so we apologize for any inconvenience.
Okay. What's the impact? We're just not able to...
We're recording, we're troubleshooting a network issue.
Okay, but it is being recorded, so while there may be some disruption to the real-time review, then the public will be able to access that. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
And I appreciate the staff efficiently moving through that presentation. And before we have public comments, because we have a second environmental document that we're dealing with today, we're going to have the staff presentation on that.
Michelle, thank you.
Thank you. Chairman, Board, Chief Operating Officer, we're pleased to be here to present information on the Bakersfield to Palmdale project section, and we will go through this rather expeditiously.
And for the record, you are Michelle Boehm, who is our Regional Director for Southern California, which includes Bakersfield today. So,
Correct. Yes, I'm Michelle Boehm. I'm the Southern California Director. This is as far north as the Southern California section goes, so we're really pleased to be up here. I do bring a team with me. Juan Carlos Velasquez, the project manager for the Bakersfield to Palmdale section, as well as Mark McLaughlin, our environmental manager for the entire project. We are here today to present to you the staff recommended preferred alternative for the Bakersfield to Palmdale section. You heard from the previous team the importance of identifying and signaling the preferred alternative in order for the public to be able to better weigh in and comment on the preferred alternative and the future draft environmental document. So we will present that to you today, and we are hopeful to receive your concurrence. I want to stress this does not constitute the adoption or approval of a preferred alternative for this project section. So as you heard with the last section, we have been actively studying how we cross the Tehachapi Mountains in order to complete the 500-mile Phase 1 high-speed rail project. In 2005, there was a programmatic EIR-EIS that set the parameters for the route. Since then, we have been studying and developing preliminary alternative analyses documents, as well as supplemental alternative analyses documents in order to make this crossing. For your reference, there is a railroad track across the Tehachapis right now that carries freight. That was built in 1874 to 1876. So we're really excited today to be able to build a modern passenger railroad crossing across the Tehachapis. You can see here on this slide the evolution over time as we study the project, as we get feedback from the public, as we learn more about the environmental resources. We have been able to sharpen our pencils and refine the route. So you can see 2010, 2012, 2016, the route has successively gotten shorter, the grades have successively gotten lower, and the impacts have successively been reduced. That does not mean that everything has been addressed yet, but we have made great strides in identifying a preliminary preferred alternative. Our route here is about 80 miles long. We have a station at both ends, and we have been studying 4 different routes here for the last several years, alternatives 1, 2, 3, and 5. And again, this is really significant because it closes a passenger rail gap across the Tehachapi Mountains. We cannot take a train. If you're a passenger across these mountains right now, you take an Amtrak bus. And it, of course, connects Central and Southern California. So we, like all of the projects in the section, have done quite a bit of outreach. We hold one-on-one meetings, we hold stakeholder working group meetings, we hold broad public outreach meetings to solicit feedback on our plans in order for us to be able to continue to refine, to develop the best project to recommend for this section. This summarizes those, and again, those circles that you see are what we are striving to do, which is take the project objectives, the environmental resources, and the community and bring those things together to identify the best possible route that balances those 3 considerations. Here is a not an exhaustive, but a good list of some of the things that we have heard the public say about this project over time. Certainly the concern about the wildlands and the agriculture, the downtown areas, both as we leave Bakersfield through Tehachapi, in Rosemont, in Lancaster, et cetera. Very important national resource, the Cesar Chavez National Monument, is along this route. So we have spoken with them at great length. We have some really exciting things going on in the Antelope Valley with the green energy generation, the space business, and then we have concerns certainly about typical things like seismic safety, air quality, dust, valley fever, et cetera. So these are all the kinds of comments that we're getting and that we are addressing as we move through the process. So we recently did a suite of meetings in Edison, in Tehachapi, in Lancaster to tell people the recommended state's preferred alternative, which is alternative number 2, referring to this map on the slide. Where it's purple, that's where this alternative is in tunnel. Where it's green, it's traveling at grade. And where it's blue, it is on a bridge structure. Over time, as we've studied, this has really been the route that when we refine and we try to avoid things, minimize things, and address our key operating issues like safety, this is the route that has risen to the top. And with that, I will introduce Project Manager Juan Carlos Velasquez, and he will take you through a few of the details on the route.
Thank you. Morning, Mr. Velasquez.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm just going to go through some of the details of the routes, the various alternatives, and we'll walk through some maps to go north to south. First, initially, this is just a table of summarizing some of the stats, the lengths, how many miles are in bridges and tunnels between the various alternatives. You can see a little bit of a range there between those. And also at the bottom there, you see the table which shows the costs. Again, all around between 13.5, 14 billion, within about a 5% range. So it's not a big variation in that. So again, walking north to south, just some details about the route and the recommended alternative. Here in the Bakersfield and Edison area, we join, of course, the Fresno to Bakersfield project that leaves the city of Bakersfield on a viaduct. From there, we go through the town of Edison. In that, with the recommended alternative, we move further away from the town of Edison, which has a school there and a residential community. With the recommended alternative, we move further away. There is some trade-offs there. As we move further away, we cross over on a viaduct, so you can see the photo there. So there is a little bit more visual impact, but it is further away in terms of noise and other potential impacts. Climbing from there, we climb up the Tehachapis. One of the main considerations of climbing the Tehachapis was the vertical grade and how to get through them. And you can see on the picture on the lower right, the Union Pacific is the dark black line and the SR-58 is the solid white line. And they essentially use the same pass. There's one pass really to get through the mountains, and that's where we're focused our study for our alternatives. And as we go through, we pass ranch lands and other areas. Just south of this area, as Michelle mentioned, we pass through a community of Keene, and there at that location is the Cesar Chavez National Monument. Through our development of our project, and the finding of effect, we did find that there were potential visual and noise impacts with our alternative that we were looking at there, which does not go through the monument, but is about 400 or so feet away. So we have been working through what's called the Section 106 consultation process, where we work with the agencies that have jurisdiction. The Cesar Chavez Foundation is part of that, about how to minimize those effects. And so we'll continue to do that, but through that process we've introduced a design option that you see here, which doubles the distance away and will minimize those visual and noise impacts. Then at the top of the Tehachapi Mountains, we cross the city of Tehachapi. The recommended alternative here essentially goes, skirts the city, avoiding development areas and their downtown. I'm at the south end. You see a couple of lines there. Again, there's some trade-offs here about how we interact with the mining areas and the green energy generation areas. You see there the alternative 2 is the one on the right. It does have shorter tunnel, and then it also reduces the impacts to those facilities. Here in the community of Rosemont, you can see it's at grade but slightly elevated. It does avoid the downtown areas of Rosemont, which are far further to the east, where you see the dark black line, which is the Union Pacific. We are slightly elevated to allow for street and wildlife crossings through this rural area. In the city of Lancaster, we joined the Union Pacific and Metrolink corridor. We'll be in a consolidated corridor there. We have a couple of schemes in this area. The recommended alternative that we're looking at here avoids impacts to a couple of recreational and historic resources, and would also minimize residential and commercial properties. And then finally, at Palmdale, this project section would end at the Palmdale station, where we'd have multimodal connections. We do pass by the Plant 42, the U.S. military facility, and the Palmdale Airport. That dictates a little bit of how our alignment crosses this section. But then we arrive at the station, and we also will have made accommodations for future potential trains to Las Vegas. With that, I will introduce Mark McLaughlin, Director of Environmental Services, to go through the environmental details.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Thank you.
Good morning. Again, Mark McLaughlin, Director of Environmental Services. So I'm going to go through some basics and some more details of identifying the preferred alternative here before you. So we've developed these alternatives with the following 3 principles in mind. First, we are looking to avoid potential impacts to the resources through planning and thoughtful design. Second, if we can avoid and minimize to the extent the impacts through design and best management practices, we take that into consideration also. And then lastly, if we still do have significant impacts, we develop measures and strategies that try to avoid and minimize, reduce and eliminate or compensate to address those impacts. Excuse me. The staff has made our recommendations by weighing the following factors before you: cost, environmental, community factors, input received from public stakeholders, regulatory agencies, including our federal partner, the Federal Railroad Administration, FRA. Of note also, alternatives 1, 2, and 3, and 5 share a common alignment. Our analysis is similar in some areas, but there are also 3 areas of meaningful design variation between these alternatives, and the variances lead to key differences in the environmental analysis. I'm going to highlight some key resource areas next here, including socioeconomics and communities, environmental justice, agricultural lands, biological and aquatic resources, and Section 4F. On Section 4F, as we previously discussed, we analyzed the potential effects here on 4F for all of the alignments. One key advantage of alternative 2, and it shares with 1 and 3, is that it would avoid impacts to 4F resources, which include Witt Carter Park and also a Denny's restaurant. It's now called the Village Grill, and it's a historic property in downtown Lancaster. For socioeconomics and environmental justice, alternative 2 would be further away from community resources in Edison, would have fewer noise and vibration impacts to the businesses and residents, including these environmental justice populations, as well as the Edison Middle School. The one downside, alternative 2 is further away from these resources, that it would be a viaduct for a longer run, thus resulting in more severe visual impact in this area. And also to note, along with alternative 2, alternatives 1 and 3 would not require the relocation of Sierra Highway, which would result in fewer impacts to the businesses, residents, and environmental justice facilities in this area. Alternative 2 would have fewer impacts to affordable housing, motels, and in downtown Lancaster. Next area is agricultural land, which again is another important topic for the program, is that this design in the Edison area would generally have fewer impacts to agricultural resources in this area. Alternative 2 would require the fewest partial agricultural parcel acquisitions and would require the second fewest full agricultural parcel acquisitions and the least amount of net parcel acquisition acreage. Important to note, which is very important to farming operations, it would avoid impacts to access roads used by agricultural packing houses in the area, which is a major economic driver in this region. Next is noise and vibration. Alternative 2 would have fewest severe impacts to these sensitive residential receptors when compared to other of the 3 alternatives. This is largely due to the fact that it is further away from these residential communities of Edison. Next, as Michelle previously mentioned, the biological and aquatic resources are important in this region. As this alternative 2, excuse me, would have the least overall plant and wildlife impacts. And of note, there are no, of the 4 alternatives, we do not have jurisdiction from the Corps of Engineers. We have an approved jurisdictional determination from the Corps of Engineers for that fact, which results in we have aquatic resources to state waters under jurisdiction of the State Water Resources Control Board. So this is a unique section as these waters do not flow to any other waters of body but are contained inland. So alternative 2 with the Cesar Chavez alternative design. Based on the environmental analysis to date for the draft, when compared to alternatives 1, 3, and 5, alternative 2 is preferable as it will have fewer relocations and displacements and minimize effects on environmental justice populations. It would have fewer impacts to protected Section 4F resources, again, including Whit Carter Park and the historic Denny's restaurant in Lancaster. It would minimize land acquisitions and avoid impacts to agricultural packing house access roads. It would have fewer impacts to future Cal Portland mining operations just north of Rosamond. It would reduce and optimize tunnel length in the area north of the Rosamond community, which in turn reduces construction durations and construction-related effects in that area, and also incorporate the Cesar Chavez design option, which would minimize noise and visual impacts to the National Monument. So for identification of the preferred, we recognize that there are trade-offs among the 4 alternatives, and the recommendation we're making today is based on the data and the analysis that we have completed to date for the EIR EIS. If alternative is identified, alternative 2 as our state's preferred alternative, our staff will continue to analyze these alternatives equally to the level of detail in the draft documents. Going forward, we will consider carefully the comments we received today at this meeting, in addition to the comments we received to date in public and stakeholder meetings. And we will also continue to coordinate with our resource agencies and stakeholders on the key issues as it relates to their jurisdictions. The comments today and this other process may lead to modifications between now and when the final is adopted, which is scheduled to take place in the mid-2020. Also, that I want to make sure that identifying today's state's preferred alternative does not constitute the adoption of approval or of a preferred alternative. So next steps, these are the rough dates here of release of the draft EIR EIS in summer of next year of 2019, roughly the same time frame for the final adoption a year later.
Before you leave, Mr.
Sure.
Well, go ahead and finish this slide.
Okay. So today, we have before you to concur with our staff recommendation to identify alternative 2 with the Cesar Chavez National Monument design option as our state's preferred alternative in the Bakersfield to Palmdale project section, draft EIR EIS. Thank you.
Before you leave, I want to make sure, because I think this is going to be confusing to the public. They're hearing us talk about the adoption of a state's preferred alternative, but that's not a preferred alternative. So I understand these are legal terms, but perhaps you, or if you need some help from counsel, could just quickly explain what that means. And
Sure.
I presume it's because of our federal partners.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure the public is not confused by this, because on its face, it's kind of confusing.
Agreed.
Good morning, Chair Richard, board members. I'm Jim Andrew, the Assistant Chief Counsel at the High-Speed Rail Authority. So what you are being asked to do today is simply to concur in the staff recommendation of identification of a preferred alternative for identification in the draft environmental document. It is not approval or adoption of anything. The state environmental laws under CEQA generally require that the draft environmental document identify the agency's proposed project. And federal environmental laws, it's similar equivalent, they just call it the preferred alternative. It is just so that the draft environmental document, when the public gets a chance to look at it, has an indication of where the agency's initial inclinations are at that point, so the staff, so the public can focus on that alternative, knowing that that's where the agency is headed. And so that's all you're being asked to do today, and it's just under the state laws. We could have called it the state's proposed project, because those are the terms of art under CEQA. We're calling it the state's preferred alternative / proposed project. It is not approval or adoption of anything. It's just an indication to the public at this early stage, with lots of environmental analysis, public input to go, of where the state is, where the agency is potentially headed. And I think the draft environmental document for public comment is due next year, and then there'll be a public round of comment, responses by the staff to those comment, more public meetings, and then back to the board in 2020 for consideration of adoption of this preferred alternative or some other alignment, depending on the process over the next couple of years.
Okay. I'm only going to spend 30 more seconds on this. So just, again, to help the public understand it, is it correct for me to point out that as we build this project, we're required to comply with both the California Environmental Quality Act and the Federal National Environmental Policy Act, and that these are terms of art that are used in those environmental processes? So what we're signaling to the public today is this is where the staff's indication is. They're asking the board to concur with that, that this could emerge as the option that is favored. It may be that there's no other step taken to declare a preferred alternate before we do the final. Is that correct?
That is correct. And part of the process we're involved in today is that the board's delegation of authority to the CEO has, since its inception, reserved to the board this step of identification of the preferred alternative at any stage in the process, whereas many other projects would not have the board take its step. The board, I think, in part to make sure that the board was able to listen to public comment and be involved in this step of the process, reserved to itself this step, which is why we're here today.
Okay, yeah. All I wanted to do was to take something that on its face didn't look like it made much sense and try to explain to people that it only makes sense if you're a lawyer. So with that,
Did a good job on there, Jim.
we'll go.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vice Chair Richards.
Jim, I want to just clarify one other thing for the public. Does it mean then that between now and the final selection and certification by this board, that the other alternatives will continue to be studied between now and then?
Absolutely, and part of the presentation that Mark gave is that those differences between those alternatives will be fully fleshed out with comment through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate both of those staff presentations, and I know a lot of work went into those. At this point, we're going to take public comment. on both of the items that have been prepared here today. The adoption of the final environmental reports on the locally generated alternative here in Bakersfield, as well as this request that the board concur in the staff's designation of a state-preferred alternative for the Bakersfield to Palmdale section. I'm going to go through the comments in the order that I've received them, with the exception that we always afford our public officials the first opportunity. So I have, as far as I can see, 2 comments from public officials. First, I'd like to welcome Mr. Alan Tandy, the City Manager of the City of Bakersfield. And as you're coming to the microphone, I want to also express our appreciation to you for making the city's facilities available to us today. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members, and staff members, and welcome to California's 9th largest city and the point of delivery for your initial operating segment. Bakersfield is a success story for you and the High-Speed Rail Authority. In 2014, under previous board and previous staff and administration, local input was not regarded reasonably by the authority who was then in place. About 5 agencies, including the city, filed litigation. But that has evolved, and it has become a positive working relationship, a friendly and cooperative relationship. We have worked through dozens of meetings with impacted parties that were impacted by the supplemental EIR. We have worked through dozens and dozens of problems with respect to issues pertaining to design, compatibility. We have worked compatibly with your staff now on a long-term vision plan for downtown Bakersfield at the F Street location, and we now have a good relationship and a positive relationship. We all read newspaper stories that somebody doesn't greet you warmly in an initial segment. That happens, but we have here a story of turning failure into a complete success. The City of Bakersfield supports the adoption of the supplemental alignment. We appreciate the close working relationship we've established with the authority over the 4 years since the initial litigation was filed, and we're looking forward to working with your staff on the delivery point and the interstation and getting you your operating segment going. So thank you very much, and we appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Tandy. And without jumping ahead of the vote that my colleagues and I will take, let me just say that we very much appreciate the working relationship that we've had with the City of Bakersfield and appreciate your leadership on this. So thank you. Next is the Mayor of the City of Palmdale, Honorable Jim Ledford. Mr. Mayor, good to see you again.
Good morning, authority members, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate the opportunity to speak. I can't tell you how excited we are about high-speed rail coming to the City of Palmdale. And I go back to 1993, our first meeting of the High-Speed Rail Commission in downtown LA. It's been a long road, but it's been a great road, and we've been able to work through lots of issues. I can tell you the latest announcement by Brightline, I think, brings an exciting component to this system. It really brings Palmdale as a convergent point of 2 high-speed rail systems are coming together in our city, and we're very, very excited about that. And when we look at things like a Palmdale to Burbank segment, we think that this may be a good P3 candidate, and possibly the Brightline might help move that process along as well. So I think that's something to look forward to. Our station planning work is underway. We appreciate the authority's engagement in that area, and certainly Michelle, we've worked her and run her hard, but she is keeping up. We appreciate that. Our airport's got some very exciting new news coming. I think our airport is going to be sooner than later, and we think certainly these systems are going to do nothing but promote that better intermodalism. So I think for us, we just want to show our appreciation. The dialogue, we've had to deal with some tough issues. We've worked through a lot of those issues, and we look forward to continuing that dialogue and working relationship because, like I say, it's all coming to Palmdale, and we're just excited to be part of the process. So thank you for allowing us to be here today and speaking on behalf of our collective effort. Good work.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Okay, members of the general public, I'm going to ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. We do have a number of citizens who wish to speak, and we'd like to be able to hear from all of you. So with that, we'll start with Steve Roberts. He'll be followed by Troy Hightower and Swanee Edwards.
Good morning, Chairman and Board. My name is Steve Roberts, and I'm representing the Rail Passenger Association of California, an all-volunteer organization focused on improved rail passenger service. First of all, I want to compliment the staff for all of their hard work in developing these two alternatives. They show some real creativity in moving through some of the challenges involved in them. Members of our group, we've reviewed the documents, and we recommend that the board approve both the Bakersfield locally generated alternative as well as the Bakersfield Palmdale alternative 2. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Troy Hightower, then Swanee Edwards, then Ellen Scott.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board and staff. My name is Troy Hightower. I'm an independent transportation consultant here locally. Before I get started, I was asked to relay a comment from Kern Transportation Foundation. Their chair, Mr. Ron Brummett, wanted to come and make comments, but he wasn't able to make it. They're very brief. He just wanted to mention that the members of KTF have supported high-speed rail since the mid-1980s, and he was on the original High-Speed Rail Commission. And then also that KTF will continue to work with high-speed rail in the future and continue to evaluate the development of the system. Switching hats, I have 3 key comments I'd like to make. One is asking the board, as I mentioned in your August meeting in Sacramento, to consider an interim station downtown at the Amtrak station. The second key point is the response to comments. I did supply a written comment, and I did receive responses. And then finally, discussion about the comparison of the Fresno Bakersfield to the LGA. The reasons that I'm recommending the downtown station, there's a number. Some of the key ones are, it was originally designed with overcapacity for high-speed rail. I think that's a key factor. Its location is downtown. By electrifying the existing track, it could be done in a cost-effective way and very timely. This is a list of what I call readiness for high-speed rail. And there's a number of reasons on here. Some of them are that it's direct connection to Amtrak's thruway bus service that goes to all of Southern California, the coast, Vegas, and could even connect to Palmdale to the proposed Vegas high-speed rail. And it's also supported by the 10-year plan in the City of Bakersfield Station Area Plan. It's also been evaluated in the Fresno Bakersfield EIR for an interim service of just what I've mentioned, which could be not only electrifying the existing track, but could consider diesel or clean diesel high-speed rail service. Here I have a letter, copy of a letter from the City of Bakersfield dated in April 2016. The letter really focuses on opposing an interim station at Poplar, but it does mention, and I'm quoting now, as an additional option to consider is to electrify the adjacent BNSF Amtrak rail line in order to allow high-speed trains to continue to the existing Bakersfield Amtrak station on an interim basis.
Mr. Hightower,
Yes.
I know you're I know you're used to my situation in Sacramento where I basically don't run a clock, but today we do have to do that. So
I'll try and wrap up real quick. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
can you do this in about 15 seconds, please?
Certainly.
I want to be fair to everybody.
Chapter 16, that was mentioned before, the changes to the document. It states in here that a majority of the comments made, 1,068, are from the generally support a station at Truxton Avenue. And I would take certain exceptions to the comments made earlier by Mr. Environmentalist, that comments made by the public were considered just opinions and not substantive. I think that's a bad signal to send to the public. I think it's important that the public participates in these processes, and I disagree with that statement.
Understood. Thank you, sir. Next is Swanee Edwards. I hope I got that right. And then
You
Al
did,
Scott.
thank you. My name is Swanee Edwards. I'm a community activist and political operative in Santa Clara County. I'm not here to talk about this particular alignment. I was invited to come down for this meeting and tour the existing construction sites and get a good idea of what's involved to take back to Morgan Hill, where I actually live. I'm the grandmother of 7, and I'm concerned about my grandchildren's future. I think that from what I've seen, this project, the phase 1, isn't near ready to conceivably start generating revenue for at least another 4 or 5 years. And the other thing that kind of blew my mind is that these little pieces of construction are just kind of sitting out there. I've watched so many videos at community group meetings and I've tried to get so much information about what's really going on here because my opinions opposed to this high-speed rail project are strong and deep. And the videos are well done. You see all these men out there just working away and everything. But what I saw yesterday was maybe a dozen workers on a bridge, but the rest of the segments were absolutely deserted. The other thing that concerned me, especially for Morgan Hill, where the valley is only 3 miles wide in South Santa Clara County, is the actual footprint of the construction site itself. It's horrific. It will destroy our quality of life, our 2 cities, our small valley, and my mind is pretty blown about the information I'm going to take back. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Alan Scott, followed by Tina McIntyre, and then Jerry Van Kuren, it looks like.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Scott, good morning.
Board. I have 2 things to say. Yesterday, I woke up to 2 articles from the Sacramento Bee that have no favorability to what's going on today with the high-speed rail. I don't know how many items I have, but I could probably stack them about this high right now in the last 6 months of where the negativity is not working well for you folks at all. I'm just going to say that you're over 3.8, over 3.0 billion in debt. You said it was 2.8 a while back, but I'm sure it's more than that right now. Where the funding's going to come from, wherever it's going to come, I don't think it's going to come from anyone other than our taxpayers. And we can't afford it. We just cannot afford it. I don't know what you people are seeing, but when I go and look online and find out how much the funded and unfunded debt is for the state of California, it's not good. The second thing is, you guys have been at it for 10 years, and nothing's connected to nothing. And that's shameful. And with that, I'll say thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Tina McIntyre, followed by Jerry Van Kuren, and then Carol Bender.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Tina McIntyre, General Manager of Marketing and Government Affairs. And on behalf of Cal Portland Company, I'm here to convey our strong opposition to selection of Alternative 2 as the state preferred alternative route. We have submitted an official letter to Chairman Richard and the members of the board outlining our official position on this matter. Alternative 2 crosses through the middle of current and future mining operations on Cal Portland's land. Our detailed review of Alternative 2 determined that it will result in severe financial, safety, and environmental issues. Cal Portland is one of the largest businesses in the local community. The Mojave Cement Plant and quarries have been operating since 1955. We have the equivalent of 200 full-time employees and contractors. Under the alternative to alignment and necessary safety buffers, Cal Portland would suffer approximately 25 years of lost mine and plant life and a gross revenue loss of $5 billion. The effects of this revenue loss would not only affect Cal Portland, but also the workers at the plant and quarries, the Mojave community, downstream customers such as ready-mix concrete producers, building product manufacturers, oil field service companies that are familiar to this area, but also Caltrans paving projects and any other consumers of cement who could be forced to pay higher prices in a less competitive cement market. The route is not feasible from an engineering, environmental, and safety perspective. Cal Portland Mojave quarries are surface mines with active pits running approximately 1,000 feet below the surface. Alternative 2 calls for the construction of portions of the route adjacent to existing pits and within the safety buffer zone. The blasting exclusion zone shown in the proposed tunnel design for Alternative 2 are only 220 feet to either side of the train. This is simply inadequate to protect the train. Cal Portland recommends a 2,000-foot buffer zone between the rail line and quarries, as fly rock from mining blast areas can strike the rail tracks or trains, resulting in potential derailment and other significant hazards, including fatalities. We're aware of one recent fatality to a mine pickup truck driver from fly rock that came through the truck's roof while the driver was parked only 1,200 feet from the blast zone. Cal Portland simply has not seen any documentation indicating that Alternative 2 was developed in a manner that would avoid this hazard. We look forward to working with the High-Speed Rail Authority to assist in avoiding the significant issues that Alternative 2 proposes. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. I assure you we will take them quite seriously. Jerry Van Kuren, followed by Carol Bender, and then Michael Turnipseed.
Good morning. My name is Jerry Van Kuren. Pardon me, I'm a little nervous here. I own a building at, it's a 15,000 square foot office building at 2623 F Street. And I'm concerned that the traffic exiting and entering this new facility is going to be harmful to us. I'm not against the project. What I am against is I think one of the thoughts is creating another lane going south on F Street by eliminating the left turn lanes. And that would be really disastrous for the property owners in there and also the businesses along there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Carol Bender, followed by Michael Turnipseed, and then Todd Turley.
Good morning. My name is Carol Bender. I am a citizen of Bakersfield. I'm not affiliated with any group. I've been involved in this public process, studying the proposals and submitting comments for over 10 years. And originally, the High-Speed Rail Authority only fully studied 3 alternatives that were just a few hundred feet apart from each other. And I would have preferred a few more studies. But here we are with 2 to compare. And it's a choice of which alignment is the better of 2 imperfect choices. And when assessing the impacts, I won't go over what Mr. McLaughlin talked about because he's pretty clear. But when assessing those, one can't overlook the fact that with regard to residential displacements, there's 78% fewer on the LGA. And with regard to important farmlands, nearly 25% fewer. That is significant. And given the climate of California's economic and political situation, there's no guarantee that this alignment will ultimately even reach the Bakersfield station. Perhaps at best, the F Street location may be the southern terminus of the high-speed rail. Given that, the LGA alignment is the one that makes the most sense and creates the fewest impacts to our community. and it'll allow for us to expand our downtown area and have plenty of time for future planning. Having 70-plus feet viaducts going through the middle of our town on the original 2014 proposed alignment on the BNSF, and having those viaducts potentially be in place for decades, perhaps forever, until the money is found, if ever, to attach to the Palmdale section, is just unacceptable. It makes absolutely no sense. What I would say in conclusion, in talking about the carry over into the next segment, I would hope that the board would look very closely at the homeless center. Right now they're scrambling and would like to expand. We know we have an extreme situation with the homeless in California. Since it will be in the path regardless of what is chosen on the Palmdale section, if that property could be purchased so that they can move and expand, would further our community greatly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bender, and stay tuned on the homeless shelter. I think you'll be hearing something on that soon. Michael Turnipseed, followed by Todd Turley, and then I'm hoping I'm reading it. Terry Maxwell, Terry McFall, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, Mr. Turnipseed? He did? Okay. Todd Turley? Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on this supplemental EIR. My name is Todd Turley. I represent Farmland Reserve, Inc., which owns approximately 1,300 acres of pistachio trees that will be bifurcated by the Fresno to Bakersfield locally generated alternative alignment, or F Street route. We believe the originally selected preferred route, the BNSF alignment, best balances all impacts and provides the best route. We strongly recommend the High-Speed Rail Authority to stick with the BNSF alignment for this segment of the line. If, however, the F Street route is ultimately selected, it would split our pistachio operations, leaving hundreds of acres of mature and producing trees on opposite sides of the rail line. This would disrupt our state-of-the-art irrigation system and place a significant and costly burden on our farming operation. Most importantly, it would create a significant public safety hazard. Anytime we need to work on the other side of our farm, workers, trucks, and other various farm equipment would have to be transported via Burbank Street after accessing the only currently planned underpass in the area. Burbank Street is ultimately planned to become the North Beltway, a major 6-lane highway which would not provide safe transport of our employees and equipment, nor the traveling public. We attempted to resolve this matter with staff, but were deferred to the appraisal process. However, we strongly recommend that the matter be addressed now, and that 1, conduits be placed along the rail line sufficient to maintain all services to the bifurcated sections of our farm, and 2, agricultural underpasses be constructed and included in the design of the rail line as shown on this map. And we had provided a copy of the map to staff. These underpasses, away from busy highways, will significantly reduce the impact to our farming operation, maintain wildlife migration corridors, and most importantly, protect the safety of our workers and the public at large. Thank you. And I would like to submit a copy of the comments and map for the record.
Absolutely. If you could give it to the gentleman here. Thank you, Mr. Turley.
Thank you.
I apologize because I didn't bring my reading glasses. So it's the person who lives on Pine Street. Sir, I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's my fault for not writing it very plainly.
I wasn't going to say that, but I'll just take the blame.
I can be self-effacing.
Could you introduce yourself for the record, since I've done such a poor job of doing that?
Chairman Richards, good to see you again. My name's Terry Maxwell.
That's what I thought.
And I am a former city councilman here at the city of Bakersfield. As a matter of fact, I was part of the group that sued that voted to sue your authority. If I knew than what I know today, I would not have agreed to sue you. In 2014, you got it right. You absolutely got it right. We got it wrong. If this is going to be about cost, if this is going to be about impact, then I've got a better alternative for you. Bypass Bakersfield completely, because that wouldn't cost you hardly anything. But if this is really about putting a station in the Bakersfield area that you want to be successful, that you want to put in a place that is going to generate ridership, economic impact, and benefit the city of Bakersfield, there's only one place to put it, and that's on Truxtun Avenue. Right now, Truxtun Avenue has got 50% of the things that you want. It's already got other modes of transportation that it can hook up to. It already has hotels. It has a convention center. It has everything you need within walking distance of where you're going to put that station. Over 50% of what you want already exists. The F Street location, 0. Nothing of what you need exists at F Street. Not a thing. Go there and look at it. Transportation-wise, you can't get there. You just can't get to the F Street location. It's not an easy place to get to, even after they do some of this construction. If it's on Truxtun Avenue, it's right down the street from where we're at right now. You could walk there from here. You could have come your high-speed rail to get to this meeting. If you took the F Street, you would have a tough time getting from F Street to here. So pretend you're not on this board right now, and you're just a resident or business owner in the downtown area of Bakersfield, and you have submitted 1,000 comments saying, we don't want it on F Street. It's a poor location. I was born and raised here in 1954. I've seen Bakersfield grow. F Street is a horrible location for this. You've got a relatively small number of people and a relatively single-focused city manager and city council that is trying to convince you F Street's a good location. It's not. Put it on Truxtun. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. Tony Emirante, followed by Leanne Eager, and then Marvin Dean.
Good morning. My name is Tony Emirante. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. I'd like to support putting the train station where it's supposed to go, down on Truxtun Avenue, where the Amtrak is now. You know, I hear the city say that if they have to put the train station down on Truxtun Avenue, then when they have to move the corporation yard. And I also hear the city saying that they want to develop downtown, revitalize it, make it more attractive to people. Well, you already have a train station on Truxtun. Can't you just, there's a vacant lot up there on F Street and 30th. Can't you just put the garbage trucks and the street sweepers up there in that vacant lot? And then, you know, you'd have people coming into downtown to work, and you'd have the train station. And sorry to be so nervous here, but I'm just a private citizen, and I think it's important to Bakersfield and all of California that we connect Bakersfield to the economic orbit of Los Angeles, so that people that live here could work an hour away, and you know, you can get a house in Bakersfield for a reasonable price compared to what you get in Southern California. It's a big lot, lots of, you know, it's better. And I just think the best place to put the train station would be down on Truxtun Avenue, put the corporation yard over on F Street. And I'm not even from Bakersfield. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. Leanne Eager, and then Marvin Dean.
Good morning. I'm Leanne Eager. I'm President and CEO of Fresno County Economic Development Corporation, and I'm always pleased to come to support my friends here in Bakersfield, my friends in Palmdale. I'm excited that the clock is starting now for the preferred alternative out to Palmdale. But I also want to give you a quick little summary of a trip that we took that we just got back a couple of weeks ago, and that was to Germany. Excuse me. The Fresno Works group with our training and education team went to go look at training facility in Germany. We also were accompanied by the folks in Palmdale who are honorary members of the Fresno Works. We looked at a training facility in Frankfurt, and I was so excited about the work that they were doing there in getting young people excited about high-speed rail, getting young people excited about the work that they were going to be doing. And we want to make sure that we bring that to the Valley. The woman that spoke about no one working on the system, obviously she hasn't been in Fresno because there are people up and down that alignment every single day. I have to drive around them all the time, I know. But we want to make sure that our local people are getting hired. So we did go to the training facility there. We went to numerous cities to look at stations. Palmdale and Fresno wanted to make sure we're going to do this right. So we looked at stations. We looked at station area planning. What does that mean? We had two really great highlights, at least two for me. One, I was able to drive a train. The new Siemens ICE 4 that no one had ever touched before. I was the first person to drive that train, and no one was killed. So that's a good thing. The other thing is we went to this small town called Kending, and we talked to the mayor there. And the mayor in Kending fought and fought and fought for years to have a high-speed rail station. And it's a tiny little town, and people said, what are you, crazy? And the reason was not because she wanted industry to come there. It wasn't because she wanted to build around the station. It was for the young people of her city. They were leaving, and they weren't coming back. And she needed to give them a way to be able to stay in her city. And so they built the station, and now they have a new generation of people that are staying in their community. And certainly that's one of the things that we look at here, right? As our folks graduate from, whether it's Bakersfield or Fresno State, we want to keep them here. But I have to tell you real quick, the most exciting thing, and this is where my high-speed rail nerd comes in, is that the city of Kending was where the video is, where they did the test for the fastest high-speed train in the entire world. And we saw the video, and all the people were waiting and cheering when I was standing on that platform in Germany, the exact same one where the train came in. So, and I know the folks in Palmdale said, you are the biggest high-speed rail nerd in the entire planet, because I'm the one that knew about that. So thank you for attending, though. That was great. Thank you.
No, I was just looking at something. Okay, thank you, Ms. Eager. Marvin Dean?
Good morning. My name is Marvin Dean. I'm the president of the Current Minority Contractors Association, and I'm your BAC Business Advisory Council member here in Bakersfield. And I want to welcome the board members and thank you for holding this meeting in Bakersfield. But let me dissect for a minute before I get into the rest of my presentation. And this is to the leadership of Bakersfield City and County. We really need to follow the leadership of what Leanne Eager is doing in Fresno, championing jobs, local jobs, and contracting, and doing an amazing thing in terms of bringing money into their city with high-speed rail. So I'm asking those of us, those that live here in the leadership, economic development, please check on what she's doing and adopt some of that here in Bakersfield. We need that kind of spirit here. I'm here to, first of all, say, at this point, I'm okay with either location, just so we get this doggone thing built. And then I would have preferred downtown for a lot of reasons, but I can live with the F Street station. And then my only thing would be to say at this point is, once the final decision has been made on the route, let's do early acquisition of the property of the people that's going to be affected for the right-of-way. Not only the homeless center, but I know a lot of the people that are affected. They've got plans for the development of their projects, and they just need some stability as to if the project is going to come there, they need to move on with their lives so that they can plan their developments and not have the property tied up, because they're not going to make any more investments in those properties until the decision is made. And then what it also will do for us, as you all know, I ain't got to tell you guys, one of the reasons why you're hopscopping around from Fresno coming this way is you haven't acquired all the right-of-way, and it's been a really challenge for you to do the right-of-way. So we don't want to make that, and when you do that, cost runs up. So if you get into early acquisition of the property, once you finalize those routes, you will find some people willing to sell because they want to move on with their lives. So we need a land bank and start preparing so that the next time we get put in a phase of construction, we won't have to wait on acquiring the land and also having the contractors to skip around and try to do development in a kind of a patch way. That's why the lady talked about probably when they came, rode the route, you only see different parts of construction going on instead of a straight line where you got full sections built out because of the challenge you have by not acquiring all that property. So let's learn from our mistakes early on. And I'm a big champion and supporter of high-speed rail. Been doing this for years. And again, I want to say that I know you guys got a lot of challenges, but keep up the good work and carry on and just push right ahead. And then I want to say to Callie Bryan, I know he took a leave of absence because of some sickness or something. So I wish him and pray his early recovery because he's one of the best CEOs we're going to have. So wish him well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Okay, that concludes the public comment period. I want to thank everybody for coming and sharing your comments with us. As part of this process, the staff would be responding to public comments. They've asked for a few minutes to get their responses together. They asked for 15. I'm giving them 10. And while they're doing that, I'm going to skip down to the board minutes from the last meeting and ask if I can get a motion to adopt those.
Second.
It was moved by Director Camacho, seconded by Director Miller. Will Secretary please call the roll?
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Curtin?
Yes.
Director Camacho?
Yes.
Director Miller? Yes. Chair Richard?
Yes. Okay, those are adopted. We'll stand in recess for about 12 minutes. Right at high noon, we're going to reconvene, and the board will then act. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I mean,
There's some I got one wrong.
No need to control so much about this. We're at 12:01.
We are, yeah, so let's get everybody. Here you go. Okay.
This is what I wrote to you, and in there is a list of names for approval. Sorry. He's up there.
Okay, no, it's not. And then it's for the Bakersfield.
No, that's all right. I waived my right. Thank you. Thank you. Sure? Okay. All right.
I'm going fast. Yes.
Could I ask people to take their seats, please? Okay, we'll be back in session. At this point, I'm going to ask Diana Gomez, our Regional Director for the Central Valley, to briefly offer staff's response to comments from this morning.
So we felt we needed to respond to 3 of the comments. First one was the electrification of the Amtrak BNSF interim. We wouldn't be able to do that. The danger with the electrical currents that are very close to the refineries, so that alignment is very close to refineries. The other would be substantial throwaway cost, and then it would most definitely increase our travel time. The other comment was the issue with bifurcating the pistachio farms. They did submit a comment letter. We did respond, and we will continue to work with them during the implementation to minimize those impacts. The other thing this morning, the city of Shafter wrote a letter, and in their letter, they claim we did inadequate analysis about the potential locations of a protected species, the shrew. In our environmental document, we appropriately identified the locations, and it was concurred by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. Those are the three that we thought we should respond to. And now Jim Andrews is going to walk through the resolutions.
Board members, again, Jim Andrews, the Assistant Chief Counsel. I'm going to walk you through the two resolutions that staff is asking that you adopt today regarding the LGA. So there's two distinct steps. It's been 4 years since the board did this before, and some of the board members are new. So there's two distinct steps here this morning. The first one is to certify the environmental document as compliant with CEQA. That's your first step, and that's in resolution, draft resolution 1816, which the board has been, you have a copy of. And then there'll be a second distinct step of actually approving, for implementation, the alignment, the LGA alignment. So let's walk through briefly Resolution 1816. In this resolution, there's 3 items that the board is certifying. First is that the final supplemental environmental impact report has been completed in compliance with CEQA. The second is that the final supplemental EIR has been presented to the board, and that the board has reviewed and considered the information in it prior to taking any action on the project. And the third, that the final supplemental EIR reflects the authority's independent judgment. So on the first one, that the EIR has been completed in compliance with CEQA, it's the opinion of staff that the EIR functions as a sufficient informational document for decision makers and the public to disclose the environmental impacts of the project, proposes reasonable and feasible mitigation measures, and as it comprises a reasonable range of alternatives. All the final supplemental EIR documents have been presented to the board. It consists of the draft environmental document, a multi-volume document, 3 volumes circulated in November of 2017, and then a 4-volume supplemental EIR. And then these documents supplement the 6-volume 2014 final Fresno to Bakersfield document. And just to be clear, because this is a final supplemental EIR, you're not being asked to do anything with respect to the 2014 document. It's just, you're not recertifying it, it's just with respect to the modifications to it that are reflected in the final supplemental EIR. Okay, so at this point, if there's any board questions or deliberation about this first item, now is the time to talk.
I think it makes sense to do each one separately, right? So you'll
Yes.
walk us through.
And then we'll walk through the second. So we're now focused on Resolution 1816, which is the certification of the EIR that you have been presented with it, and that it reflects the authority's independent judgment. And that last item, just briefly, you're not being asked to simply rubber stamp a consultant drafted document. Mr. McLaughlin, Ms. Gomez, Authority Legal has been heavily involved in the development of that document, and it does reflect the independent judgment of the authority, and we believe it's a satisfactory document.
Okay, before I seek a motion on this, I want to just turn to my colleagues and ask each of them in turn if they have questions for staff or comments that they wish to make at this point. Looking down to my left and to my right. Okay. I'm going to make one just very quick comment, which is that I just wanted to say, having sat on this board in 2014, I'm sympathetic to a lot of the arguments that people made about the Truxton station. If you look at high-speed rail stations around the world, there are some that are located in downtown areas. There are some that are located at the edge of downtown. And I understand, theoretically that there could be advantages from a development standpoint at Truxton, but also I'm aware that there are some very strong, very innovative transit-oriented development proposals around the F Street station. So it's not an easy decision, but I do think that the environmental documents and the associated comments have laid out good reasons for the F Street station. And I also think that the support of the elected and appointed leadership of the city and the work with the staff on that has been very vital. So Bakersfield is one of the fastest growing parts of the state. It's going to continue to grow in many ways, and to a certain extent, my hope is that if we do adopt this F Street station, that we can help Bakersfield channel that growth in some very positive and productive ways. So that's the comment I wanted to make. I'll entertain a motion now on Resolution 1618. Director Miller?
Yes, I'd like to move approval of Resolution 1816, which is the certification of the final supplemental environmental document for the Fresno to Bakersfield section, including our locally generated preferred alternative. And I understand that the document, my independent judgment is we've all looked at this document and listening to numerous comments, and I've even gone back through prior meetings because I am the newest member on the board. I've reviewed those, and I believe that the document is prepared in accordance with law, has discussed a reasonable range of alternatives, reasonable mitigation measures, and therefore I move it.
Thank you. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved by Board Member Miller and seconded by Board Member Camacho. Without other comments, will the Secretary please call the roll?
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Curtin?
Yes.
Director Camacho?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Chair Richard?
Yes. Okay, so that's adopted. Mr. Andrew?
Yes, moving on to the second step, which is actually approval of the LGA alignment for implementation as stated in draft resolution 1817. And there are three sections of that resolution. I'll go through them briefly with you. The first section, in section 1 of the resolution, the board will be approving what are called CEQA findings of fact. These are required under the law to be stated, and the board has received a copy of those. It articulates each of the significant environmental impacts of the LGA alignment and lays out feasible mitigation for those impacts. It also includes in it what's called a statement of overriding considerations, and that's required under the law when significant impacts of a project that you are about to adopt would remain despite application of mitigation. And the statement of overriding considerations effectively say that the benefits of implementing the project are worth enduring the significant environmental impacts that will remain after mitigation. It's called the statement of overriding considerations, as the name implies. And then section 3, the last part of section 1 is where the board would adopt a mitigation monitoring and reporting program that staff has mentioned before. It is a listing of the same mitigation, and Chair Richard is holding that document up that you received already on CD and by reference to the website, and there's a copy of it there. It contains the same mitigation that are listed in the findings of fact, which is much more detail about implementation, timing, and the like, as Mr. Bain articulated earlier. In the second section of the resolution is the part where you would actually be approving the alignment, the F Street alignment, and the LGA alignment and the station. There's a map included with your document that actually shows in detail the approximate footprint of what, or the footprint of what you're approving, including the F Street station, but stopping at the F Street station.
All right.
And then one other thing, the resolution also points out that the project that the board approved in 2014 actually included the alignment, the old alignment through the city of Shafter. This LGA alignment actually revises the alignment only vertically, not horizontally, within the city of Shafter. So this resolution would approve the LGA, but would also rescind the 2014 approval just for that small portion of the alignment between Poplar Avenue and 7th Standard Road. So I wanted to be clear that that's what you would be doing. And then finally, the resolution notes next steps, that we would file what's called a notice of determination, which formalizes notice to the public of the action if you take it here in the next step.
Okay. Director Miller?
Yes, I'd like to move Resolution 18-17 for adoption. We understand that includes the CEQA findings of fact, the statement of override, the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, as well as approving the LGA alignment and this additional City of Shafter minor change. So with that, thank you, staff, and thank you all that came and talked to us today about this project.
Okay, it's been moved. It's been moved by Board Member Miller, seconded by Board Member Camacho, and I just want to say I'm going to ask the staff to make sure that they take a closer look at the farming impacts that were described today. Yes, sir. Thank you. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Curtin?
Yes.
Director Camacho?
Yes.
Director Miller? Yes. Chair Richard?
Yes. Okay, that completes the items on the Bakersfield LGA. We've adopted. We've both certified the CEQA analysis and adopted the locally generated alternative. So we have an alignment here through Bakersfield. I want to thank everybody who's been involved in this process for that. Thank you. Okay, our final item then relates to the staff recommended, staff preferred, but not completely preferred alternative from Bakersfield to the center of the universe at Palmdale.
I think you want a motion here, is that correct?
Yes, correct. We're seeking concurrence, and we had all of those slides about the fact that this is neither an approval, but this is just a step along the way. So we are here, basically, we've presented you the staff recommendation. We are able, obviously, you are able to make some comments to us if there's anything else that we should consider as we move forward, but we believe that the alternative 2 is the appropriate recommendation to move forward with.
I'd like to move forward the concurrence with the staff recommendation for the preliminary alternative from Bakersfield to Palmdale.
Okay, been moved by Director Miller, seconded by Director Camacho. And again, I just want to ask the staff to redouble efforts to work with Cal Portland to look at minimization of impacts on that significant business facility.
Duly noted.
Thank you. Secretary, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Richards? Yes. Director Curtin?
Yes.
Director Camacho?
Yes.
Director Miller? Yes. Chair Richard?
Yes. Thank you, staff. Okay, with that, we've completed the agenda today. Before we go into closed session, I do want to recognize that we also had the participation today from the Mayor of Wasco, Gilberto Reina, as well as City Manager Daniel Ortiz Hernandez. So thank you for coming here today, and we appreciate the good work in the City of Wasco. I want to thank everybody today. I want to thank the staff. I know this is a lot of work to get to this point. It's a significant milestone for the high-speed rail system because our 2018 business plan identifies the first real phase of the high-speed rail system as extending from here in Bakersfield, the Central Valley to the Silicon Valley and up to San Francisco. So with that, we've completed yet another major piece of the environmental work that has to be done. There's still some segments that have to be cleared, but this is a very important step for us. And I also want to say that contrary to what you may read in the press, this is a community that in the end has worked with us, welcomed us, as has been the case in Wasco, Fresno, other communities. So we're moving forward with this program. With that, the Board of the High-Speed Rail Authority will enter into a closed session in some facility nearby. Where are we going? Right back there. So we'll recess this meeting. I'll report back afterwards if there are any actions from the closed session. Thank you all for coming here.
Thanks.
Okay, we're back in session. The closed session of the High-Speed Rail Authority Board has been completed. We have no items to report. So with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.